So you've been a long-term ambassador for Peace One Day. Tell us why.
It seems such a good idea. I mean, any idea that brings the nation states of the world together. It was a simple idea because the day existed in my understanding, but no one agreed it was the first some day of the first month or whatever, and there was a vagueness to it. And your idea of going to the different leaders of the different nation states, separate states, and saying, can we all agree it's the 21st of September? It's just an example that people can agree about things, even though they are, every state is so different and individual, and we wouldn't want them not to be individual. But to have a day every year that's dedicated to that, and then the promises that you expressed to me at the time about the movement towards an annual day of ceasefire, and the many occasions when that occurred and you were able to achieve that, were just, made me so proud to have been part of the initial idea that peace could exist even when airplanes are flying over.
Yeah. All right, let me ask you something else. What does peace mean to you?
Peace begins in ourselves and expands out into the universe from there and back in again, in that it is to do with the movement from identifying yourself here and some opposing enemy over there as the other, and attempting to dominate that enemy. It may be trauma, it may be some awful tyrant, it may be a thought form in your mind, it may be a terrible teacher in school, or a government that you feel is oppressing you. Even just separating them into another is an effort of dominating them. And to my understanding, in my life of 63 years, peace comes when you start to see, no, they're not another, they are part of me. This trauma and this villain who abused me or whatever is not something other than me that I can dominate, lock away, murder, destroy. It is something I need to work with, and it's here in my life to be worked with. And it's actually, the more you engage in these practices of peacemaking with your enemies, then the more you understand them to be actually incredible teachers, the best teachers you'll ever find. And that extends up into one's relationships, my relationship with my wife, into relationships in the community, in the workplace, relationships with between nation states. So peace is an active engagement with the enemy. It's an active engagement. It's striving in friendship and strife. It's striving in friendship. Tolstoy, interestingly, a friend of mine tells me, felt that it was the only revolutionary act possible for humanity. The only one. All other revolutions were bogus, he said. The only revolution is loving your enemy. That's the only revolution there is. And we've needed it for many thousands of years, and we need it more than ever now. In that nature itself has, in the present story, is our enemy. The smallest parts of nature, it's something we have to dominate and control, and it's our right to control it. That's the story we're in at the moment. We are shifting rapidly as we realize we've taken on Muhammad Ali as an enemy. You cannot make nature your enemy and survive. You have to be humble and make peace with nature, your own nature, and the larger nature of animals, plants, the universe. But it can begin with yourself. In fact, if it doesn't begin with yourself, it will not work, in my experience.
How and where do you find peace?
Again, I find peace when my mind shifts and I am thinking that someone is an enemy or opposed to me or hates me or wants to hurt me or destroy me. And I start to imagine, what's their perspective? What do they need? What do they feel vulnerable about? I'm human. I don't do it all the time. I get into conflict with people. and other them, so to speak. It's almost a verb for me now, to other someone, to make them other than yourself. It's not to say that I want everyone to be like me. No, I want them to be as much themselves as I'm trying to be myself. But it's really to move to a higher or wider or deeper perspective, where we're all sharing much more than we don't share. It's not, peace for me is not, a yogic trance or sitting. I mean, I do all those things, meditations and different things, and they are very peaceful. But peace is a much more creative, happy. It's got strife in it. You're striving together. You're striving in friendship. You're striving in a connection. So, very, very complex situations. Being on film sets, multi-million-dollar film sets, with terrible time pressure and all this stuff, and trying to create things. Long runs of plays, running a theatre. It's in all my relationships. It's not a retreat. It's an engagement. Peace is an engagement. It's an engagement, and it leads to a marriage, and a marriage is work, happy work. But a marriage, you can't. Peace is in attendance and a wakefulness to all the tiny little ways that we make something or someone other to us, and I think that would be it for me. You can argue in peace. In fact, you must argue in peace. You can be cross in peace. The difference between peace and non-peace is not trying to dominate someone else.
Could you just tell us two more little things? Could you just tell us something about the role of narrative in relation to the manifestation of a more peaceful and sustainable world?
The book I looked at coming to see you, and I don't know if we can promote books. I'm not
Please
promoting
do.
it,
I'd like you to.
but this is a book by Charles Eisenstein called Climate, A New Story. A New Story. And it's an amazing book, full of wonderful ideas, as Mr. Eisenstein always is. But his premise here is that we are in the grip of an old story that separates us heroically from the rest of nature, that we are God's chosen, and that we are the most conscious beings in the universe, and it's our job to garden or to rule nature, rule our own nature, garden it, that kind of it, and that we are moving inevitably, Charles says, to a new story, which is the story of interbeing. And so you'll hear me talking a lot about this, because it's an idea that I find very, very hopeful, and I think it's going to happen one way or another, that we will realize that that we are a part of the earth, not separate from it, and we must live in interbeing with it, not only with each other, but with all the other beings that are here, many of which we may not yet be aware of. Not to mention the beings that are in the solar system, the galaxy, the universe, the cosmos. There's a lot coming in our consciousness, as there always has been, and I find his so I think becoming conscious of the narratives that you are fed as a child, from your parents, your grandparents, your school, from culture, from Marvel hero movies, from Shakespeare, from all kinds of culture, from paintings, music, dance, not just novels and poems. Checking that narrative with your life. Does that narrative hold true? Observing other people who follow certain narratives. Does the garden flower around them, is it beneficial, their work in their life? And so narratives are really crucial, and dominate. People are very hungry for a story. What should I do today? What should I do tomorrow, next week, next month, next year? what is the point of being here? I think it's something that comes to some people are very happy and content and not worried about that. For many of us, at least at some moment in your life, often when tragedy strikes, you're going to think, what is the story? What does this mean? Why did this happen? Can I avoid this happening again? Certainly in relationships, if you long for an intimate relationship with your partner or your children or your ancestors, certainly in workplaces, we're making these narratives all the time. You see how much effort the big corporations and the governments put into the story. This is the enemy. We've got to go bomb them or they're going to bomb us. These enemies are all around us. We've got to spend all the money we would spend on caring for our young people and our old people on making nuclear weapons to defend ourselves. Right, that makes sense. And then someone asks, when would we use them? How would we use them? Would we preemptively strike and wipe out billions of people and poison the earth? Would we be the first one to send? Would we send one after they were on our way or after we'd been bombed? What would be the point of that? When you think about it, it is a totally lunatic story. It doesn't make sense. That money spent on nuclear weapons, imagine if we put it into a university of diplomacy, of mediation, of peacemaking. I've observed these people through another charity, which is very much a sister organization of yours, Peace Direct, where they have all these people working in war zones, grassroots people who for 60 quid can drive in a taxi to a village where someone has died and stop the two clans murdering each other just because this wonderful man Henri in the Congo, he knew how to say, well, wait, let's take a moment, let's have a cup of tea. Are you feeling hungry? Distract them, sit down. Now, yeah, the person has died. Compensation needs to be made, but are you really going to get compensation if you wipe out all of their family? You're feeling angry and upset. It's understandable. But let's think about it. Let's think about how we can avoid something like this happening in the future. Whatever he does, I don't know how he does it, but that's him going in and changing the story. That's what we need between Ukraine and Russia. Let's go in and find out what's the story that Putin was told that convinced him to come in there. What's the story that the Ukrainians were told that convinced them to arm up and use cluster bombs to defend themselves? Once a war kicks off, no one's in the right. No one's in the right. You've seen it in the street when people start fighting or in a pub or something. It's just damage. It's just multiple injury and damage and trauma. It's not the way to resolve things. In fact, at the moment, resolving things through the military complex, it's like, in my mind, two people fighting over who has rights to a cabin as the Titanic sinks. Now, are we right to spend millions of dollars and pounds arming up one side so the two sides are equal, hopefully so they'll sit down and talk? I don't know, the Titanic's going down. I think it's more, we need some really strong mediators who are neutral to go in and say, take a step back from this. If the armaments is to bring people to the talk table, where eventually they'll have to come, but after how many losses of civilian life and war, all life, not to mention plants and animals and all the other life, it's absolutely nuts, and we don't stand for it anywhere else. So if you did this in the workplace, no way you'd get sacked. If you did it on the football pitch, you get a red card and you're off. Certainly in my profession, you cannot with violence and try and get what you want. It's not accepted. Why the hell do we accept it on the international arena between nation states? And I'm afraid the answer is money. They're afraid the answer, when something is happening, you got to look at who's benefiting. And unfortunately, particularly the winners in war get very, very tempted to carry on with war, the making of weapons, the selling of weapons, the provocation of conflict. There's a lot of people, sadly, who make a lot of money out of it, and excuse themselves through the story that war is inevitable, that war is. It's not, if we sell it's how they use, it's whether they use the weapons or not. That's up to them. We're not guilty if we sell them weapons. I'm sorry, if I went down my street when I heard someone was arguing and said, would you like to buy this revolver to help resolve your marital strife? I don't think I'd be innocent. So I'm very ashamed and at times angry when I'm othering them that our government and our people vote for this in ongoing military complex and some kind of idea that Britain has some role on the world police force. It's a terribly negative and destructive idea. Madness in the face of climate change. Madness.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Long answer, sorry.
No, and also, of course, as we run out of resources and we destroy the beautiful things around us that we won't be able to use again, we're going to fight over what's left. I mean, no climate action, no peace, right? I mean, it's all inextricably linked, isn't it?
Not only resources, natural resources. Think of the people who are involved in making weapons, the noble, idealistic, brave young people who go to fight, men and women fighting things because they believe in something good and are willing to risk their lives for something good. Think of all that human energy, the scientists, the industrialists, all that human invention and energy that goes into the military industrial complex that could be addressing all the different issues that we are facing, of pollution and energy and loss of biodiversity and the weather changing and all the different things. You know, take that money, let's make some universities of diplomacy, peacemaking, mediation. The corporations do it. The corporations have human resources and they depend on mediation and lawyers and people like that when they want to buy each other out and all the things they get up to. No, it's a cynical business, the military industrial complex, in my mind. More than cynical, vicious.
A couple of little things I want to say. Scylla Elworthy is also appearing live today on Peace Day.
Well, Scylla Elworthy's one of my great mentors and teachers, a genius woman.
We can't talk about peace without talking about your dear friend that you're creating a sculpture for, and I just wondered, have you achieved everything? I mean, to anyone watching, is there any way we can help with your wonderful vision of creating that beautiful statue?
Thank you very much for reminding me. Yeah. There was an extraordinary man who stood every minute, every hour, every day, every week, every year for 10 years in Westminster Square, addressing the politicians as they went in and came out, saying very simply in the end, stop killing my kids. He originally said stop killing the kids. And then on one Christmas Eve he saw everyone coming out and he thought, who are all these people? Why do they walk past me and not stand with me, all these Christians? Because they're not considering the children of the world as their own children. They're considering them as others, different. They're not worried about the children in Iraq at that time and the children elsewhere. The depleted uranium that Tony Blair and our government was dropping into Iraq. 50,000 years of birth defects will be the product of that depleted uranium. And yet the Christians came out of Westminster Abbey not giving a penny or stopping to talk to Brian. So he also moved, interestingly, to stop killing my kids, not their kids, our kids. Anyway, he died from cancer, probably exacerbated by the pollution from the streets. And a friend of mine, Amanda, made a statue of him, bronze statue, and we tried to get it into Westminster Square, but they wouldn't have it, of course. You can't even protest there now anymore. But just outside the exclusion zone around the government is a building that used to be an insane asylum, a mental health hospital called Bedlam. And now, not surprisingly, it is the Imperial War Museum. And they're nice people, and they've agreed that we can put the statue across the street from them on the wall of a great friend of mine who owns a building there that was one of the first hospitals to treat soldiers with post-traumatic shock syndrome. And so Brian's going to be standing on that wall facing the Imperial War Museum with the plaque saying, stop killing the kids, our kids, my kids.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
And what a lovely person to talk about to our discussion.
Well, good luck with today, everyone. It's a wonderful thing to be gathering on the International Day of Peace. Many blessings, many blessings.